This lesson today is about making a good argument. In this chapter, we're going to learn how an argument is made, and an argument is going to be made through making a point, through a conclusion, or by providing logical evidence to back it up. One of the things that readers need to be able to do is to recognize a good point and also be able to recognize if there is enough logical evidence to back up that point. Also, argument is good when writing papers, and as English students, you will probably have to write an argumentative paper, and so hopefully some of these strategies or tips that we use in this lesson will help you recognize arguments and recognize if the reading that you have been assigned to has supportive evidence to back up the point that the author is trying to make, and also to help you become a better writer by presenting your argument or by presenting your point to the reader so that they understand where you're coming from. So first of all, we're going to go to the other screen, and we're going to go through a PowerPoint that's going to help us be able to recognize when an argument is being used and the proper way that we need to support that particular point. And we'll have practice activities throughout this as well to help you understand it a little bit better. So basically, when making an argument, you need to make a good point. Just as this little cartoon, it appears that the person is trying to make a good argument, and most of the time when we hear argument, we think of someone trying to fight, that type of aggressive argument. But when writing and when reading, argument doesn't have to be about being aggressive or about fighting. It's trying to make sure the other person who's reading your paper understands your point and that you have supportive evidence. Okay? So you want to have solid evidence so that the person, excuse me, that you're trying to get your point across to understands and agrees with your point. So we have some basic points of support. And first thing you need to know that a good argument is one in which you make a point, and then you provide logical evidence to back it up. So I guess you could say that you are trying to persuade the person to believe your argument by giving them logical evidence. For instance, in this statement, the point is the beef and the burger shop is a poor fast food restaurant. Well, if I don't back this up by evidence, how do you know that it's a poor restaurant? Just by me stating this point does not justify that this is a poor or terrible restaurant. Now, if I gave you these reasons, if I said the burgers have gristle in them, the roast beef sandwiches have a chemical taste, and the fries are soggy. Now, in this case, we are clearly getting support, and it's logical evidence that backs up that this beef and burger shop is a poor fast food restaurant. So unless you provide the logical evidence, you're not going to persuade anyone to see your point or your point of view. So take a look at these next two statements. One of them is going to be the point, and one of them is going to be support, and we'll see if you can figure out the difference. Okay? A says you have constant headaches and blurred vision. B says you should see the doctor. Okay? One of the things, and I put this hint on here, one of the things that I tell my students, if you can put the word because in front of it, then the statement is probably support. So if we were to say, because you have constant headaches and blurred vision, you should see a doctor. So therefore, these are going to be, that first statement is going to be your support. We could even do it with the same thing about the burgers. An example, because the burgers are full of gristle, because the roast beef sandwiches have chemical taste, and because the fries are soggy, this restaurant has poor service. Okay? So if you can, don't forget, if you can put the word because in front of it and it still makes sense, then more than likely it's going to be your point. It's going to be your support, not your point. And that's what we just talked about. Here it is. We said your point is you should see the doctor because you have blurred vision. Now we have three statements below. One is going to be the point, and two will be the support. And again, don't forget, if we can put because in front of it, then more than likely it will be the support. A says a television is always blaring in one corner of the lounge. The student lounge is not a place for quiet study. There are always people there talking loudly to each other. So if I could put because in front of either of these statements, then that's going to be our supporting detail, okay? That's going to be our support or our evidence. So A and C would be our support. If you chose those two, you are correct. And then B would be the point. So because the television is always blaring in one corner, because there are always people there talking loudly to each other, the student lounge is not a quiet place to study, okay? So again, don't forget, if you're having difficulty picking out the point, then try putting the word because in front of each of those statements, and whichever of the statements makes sense with the word because in front of it, those are going to be your support. They will not be your point, okay? This time we have four statements. One statement is the point, the others are support, okay? A says, the people upstairs make a lot of loud noise. We'd better look for another apartment. Roaches seem to be taking over this apartment. The landlord does nothing but promise to fix the leaky faucets, okay? If you chose A, C, and D, you are correct. Because people upstairs make a lot of noise. Because roaches seem to be taking over this apartment. Because the landlord does nothing but promise to fix leaky faucets. We'd better look for another apartment. Now look at the difference if we put because in front of our point. Because we'd better look for another apartment. See, that one doesn't make sense, but it makes sense when you use it in front of the support. So if you put because in front of each of those statements, then that's going to lead you to the support or the evidence that backs up your point. Then you have relevant and adequate support. Okay, so after you have picked out your point and your support of the argument, you need to do these two things. You need to decide if the support, is it relevant? Does it really apply to the point? Decide if the support is adequate, meaning is there enough evidence to prove your point? So these are two very important things that you want to do and make sure that you have to see if you are supporting your point of argument. Does it apply to the point? And is there enough support there to prove your point? So we're going to take a look at these. Below we have 6 facts. Only 3 of them are going to be relevant to the point, okay? And then the other 3 are not going to be relevant, of course, okay? So we say the point is my dog Otis is not very bright. Look at your choices, and I'm going to give you a few minutes to read through them. I'm not going to read through them for you, but I'm going to give you a few minutes to read through them, and 3 of those are going to be relevant to the point. My dog Otis is not very bright. Okay, I'm going to give you a few minutes to read through them. Okay, did you get finished? Did you read through all of them? Okay, let's see which ones you should have chosen. The 3 that you should have chosen is that he's 5 years old and doesn't respond to his name yet. He often attacks the backyard hedge as if he's a hostile animal. And he often, when I put food in front of him, because he can't find, I have to put food in front of him because he can't find it by himself. So all these 3 things are relevant to the fact that Otis is not very bright. Let's just back up just a minute to see the other choices that we had. We said he cries when I leave for work. That doesn't show that he's not bright. It just shows that he's sad when I leave. He gets excited when visitors come. Most dogs do get excited. He gets along very well with the neighbor's cat. Some dogs, if they grow up with kittens, then they get along with them. So you see what I mean by relevant? We're saying he's not bright, so we need to give logical evidence to prove our argument that he is not very bright. Now, when talking about adequate support, we talked about the three things that are going to be given. Out of this, we're going to choose one point that is adequately supported. So this time we're going to give the support, and you're going to find which point goes along with those supporting things. Okay? So the first part, and I'll go through and read through these quickly. Support says, the first time I went to the beach, I got a bad case of sunburn. The second time I went to the beach, I couldn't go in the water because of the pollution. The third time I went to the beach, I stepped on a starfish and had to go to the emergency room to have the spikes removed from my foot. So which one of these would be an adequately supported by the evidence above? The beach is unsafe and should be closed. I've had a string of bad experiences at the beach. The beaches are not safe. We're not going to get this we're never going to get this planet cleaned up. Which one of those would be the adequate, which one of these would be the point based on the adequate support that you're given? A, B, C, or D? And you should have chosen B because of all the different experiences that she had at the beach. I've had a string of bad experiences. The beach shouldn't be closed. The beaches, it doesn't say or back up or give evidence that it's not a safe place. And it doesn't have anything to do with the planet getting cleaned up. Okay? So that's what you're looking for when you're looking to see if your point is adequately supported by the evidence that you present or that the author is presenting to you. When you're looking for in textbook writing, most textbooks take on the form, they give us well-developed ideas and theories. Basically, they are supported with experiments, surveys, studies, and all these other different things. So generally, you don't have to worry too much about your textbook argument not being supported because usually there's pretty solid evidence because the research has been done prior to writing the book. However, you want to be able to recognize the points and ask yourself still whether the support is relevant and adequate, and this will help you be involved and make you a critical reader. Okay? So basically, going back to what we talked about in the beginning, to sum it all up, a good argument is where you make a point or a conclusion, but you have to have logical evidence to back it up. It's a critical reading aspect of reading where it kind of makes you get involved in what you're reading. So even though the authors are going to, provide you with well-researched material, documented material, if you want to be that active reader and get involved in what you're reading, then it doesn't hurt to question what you're reading and see if they have presented an argument that has logical evidence and that it is backed up to prove the argument or the point that they're trying to make to you. You need to first decide if the piece of evidence is relevant, and then as you're doing that, think through the argument, especially if you're writing, and decide if you have adequate support. Usually this kind of goes hand in hand when you're writing maybe a paragraph or a paper. It may be a paragraph or an essay to start with, especially in reading class. And if you come up with your point or your topic sentence, you have to come up with the evidence or the support to persuade your reader to believe or make your writing believable. Okay? So even though argument is not a big part of reading, it is an important part of reading if you want to become an active reader.